So now we will go to Ireland, and Maeve, what is the weather in Ireland? What is the weather in your RPL system? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maya and Heleriin. The weather here is a cloudless sky, so it's great. We actually need to see clouds, and that was a very good RPL word cloud to start us off. And I will be able to relate some of the points to what's in the word cloud. So if you like, now I will share my screen. And here we go. And of course, we'll be able to take questions afterwards. So my first presentation is about the recognition of prior learning in Ireland. And you'll be able to see what our experience has been like. I'll talk about the developments and the drivers for the use of RPL in Ireland. Just briefly refer to the policy documents and reports. You'll be able to see the link on the recording afterwards. Features of practice, resources for RPL practitioners, and the elements that enable RPL to be applied, and also the challenges or the barriers or things that inhibit RPL, but also how we actually overcome those barriers. So the developments and drivers in Ireland have been higher education institutions working with adult learners and industry or community groups, in my case since 1995, because that's when a group of higher education staff went to other countries to investigate RPL. We also have Cork Institute of Technology's extended campus. They've been major contributors to the field because CIT invested 3 academic posts in RPL in one higher education institution. Other institutes of technology like mine, we incorporate RPL services into the academic workload. And we've had, over these years, industry policy documents and fora. So that's a map of Ireland, the 11 institutes of technology. At the bottom there is Waterford, and there's, in the next county, is Cork Institute of Technology. So we have statutory bodies promoting RPL. The main one is the Higher Education Authority in Ireland. It established a national forum for the enhancement of teaching and learning in higher education, and that's also playing a very important role. We also have Qualifications and Quality Ireland, and they look after quality assurance and the actual programs. So they've been reports like this generated by the Higher Education Authority's National Forum, QQI, their report on RPL and further education, another driver for us. So some features of practice, and I'm speaking here now about higher education in Ireland, is there's a lack of common definition of RPL, and there's another slide about that further on. The other feature is RPL is used more to recognise prior certified learning only, rather than recognising prior experiential learning. Prior experiential learning and its recognition is regarded as very complex. RPL is commonly used for entry to postgraduate programs, where the standard entry requirement is an EQF level 6 honours or equivalent. It's also that all of the higher education institutions aim to recognise relevant learning from experience, not experience itself. And this is where it causes difficulty in common understanding. If a student is required to match learning outcomes, they may end up considering that it would be easier to do the course. So it's not regarded as learner-centred from that point of view. And staff view RPL as time-consuming in terms of mentoring. Other is that some higher education providers have RPL integrated throughout their schools and programmes, as in the case of Cork, but other higher education providers use it when developing programmes with a field of practice. For example, in our case in Waterford, tourism course for Fall to Ireland. Or they develop it when they're required to do so by a funder. For example, the springboard courses we have targeting adults who are unemployed or who need to upskill. So in other words, the funder is incentivizing the institute to engage with RPL. I find it very useful in relation to getting over the lack of a common understanding to use the 4 villages framework, because I think we're talking about 2 villages in the uses of experiential learning. Village 1 is concerned with opening up new routes for adult formal education and training. So it's very much about the adults, the learners' point of view. Village 2 is concerned with widening access to formal education, recognizing prior experiential learning as a resource to be valued in some way. Now, the other uses in the other villages are experiential learning for group consciousness raising and social change, as in feminist pedagogy, and the 4th is the use of experience for therapeutic goals. But what I find useful about this framework is there's a different understanding depending on the village. So this is where developing a shared or a common understanding is needed. So what enables RPL to be applied? Well, as I said earlier, where funders of adult-only courses make it a requirement. Another enabler is continued professional development for staff in higher education, and we also have that available in further education in Ireland. The Higher Education Authority funding for RPL projects. The earlier one was the myexperience.ie portal developed by 3 institutes of technology in the northwest of Ireland, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then a community of practice for further education and higher education staff engaging with RPL or thinking about engaging. And I'll just give you brief illustrations of these in the following slides. So there's our national forum established by the Higher Education Authority. We have online courses delivered by peers, and they're excellent. The Further Education Support Service doesn't have CPD courses, but has information online for further education staff. There's the portal for the HEA-funded, the earlier HEA-funded RPL project. The RPL Practitioners Network in Ireland has been transformative, I think, for staff, and that's the link to it. And they aim to provide a coherent practitioner voice, to support the development of community practice, and to promote good practice. So the barriers or the challenges that we have faced, the first is embedding RPL in organisations rather than leaving it in innovation enclaves, where a department or a programme develop expertise in RPL. Failure to embed RPL means that the knowledge is lost when people move or retire. So the real challenge is to get it embedded in the organisation. When an organisation wants to embed RPL, they often have to overcome initial resistance to it. If you have staff who've never had any dealing with RPL, that's a barrier to be overcome. Lack of top-down leadership limits RPL, because there has to be something in the strategies or the policy documents giving staff permission, saying that the policy is there, but also an expectation that it's going to be used. But also there's a lack of motivation of staff if or when you can get sufficient numbers of students. Without it, they say, well, why bother? We're getting our numbers anyway. So this is where the policy driver is essential. If you want to increase the number of adults or lifelong learning numbers, that's the motivator. And some regulatory bodies may exclude RPL. So how do we overcome those barriers? Well, if we make visible the successful participation of adults who have used RPL, it's a great selling point, because then staff aren't worried. They know it's rigorous. They know that the students who are coming through this route are well prepared. They have generic skills that are going to underpin their successful participation. They have a right to be there. The community of practice approach within an organisation where there's sharing of studies of good practice. So in Ireland, we have the RPL Practitioners Network, and now in our own institute, we're going to set up an internal network. And that just enables staff to dip in, dip out, avail of the materials and resources as and when they need to. I would also say we should be encouraging organisations to claim that they are responding to mature students and workplace learners by using RPL. Give teams credit for doing it. We also have to make RPL a part of work allocation and timetabling for staff, and that takes planning. And we also are recommended to digitize existing systems. And that's where I'll talk about the project I'm on at the moment, where we're doing exactly that in Waterford Institute of Technology. So back to you now, Heleriin and Maya.
Okay, so we will now, we have another guest here as well who will have a word. And we will give a floor for a short comment to Ina Järve. Ina is working in Estonian University of Life Sciences, and Ina will reflect a little bit the situation in her school, and also will give a short comment about what kind of challenges you are facing in developing the RPL system in your school.
Thank you, Mai. And hello to everyone. Yes, I am presenting Estonian University of Life Sciences. And what I can say about RPL in our university, I think, and I'm not mistaken saying that RPL works quite well in our university. But of course, we have also some problems, or nicely said challenges. And they are mostly in engineering area. We have two integrated engineering study curricula, and as we know, master's level curricula must meet the requirements of the European qualification framework, specifically level 7. And our engineering studies graduates get with diploma also occupational framework, specifically level occupational qualification in preliminary level. And these requirements are quite strict. So RPL in engineering curricula can be considered mostly in subjects level, not so much in modules as we wish. And this is the main reason why engineering students often can't go study abroad. But we try to be flexible as much it can be, and we are working on that to find solutions. So that's shortly about our university.
And we will now go back to Ireland. Maeve, you have time to speak about a little bit this practical experience that you are recently having in your own school. And I think it's quite interesting to hear how you are developing the system at the moment.
Thank you very much, Maya. I am a lecturer in Waterford Institute of Technology, and I've been engaged as part of my work with adults since 1995. And we were very pleased to actually get a Higher Education Authority funded project to implement RPL or to extend it further. And I'll describe what's going on to you. So I'll talk about the project, its objectives, who's involved, in other words, the stakeholders, the progress we've made to date, what we're learning, and the next steps. So the project aim is to increase the numbers using RPL in Waterford Institute of Technology. And this follows the national policy documents looking for more lifelong learners, and I'll give you the figures in a moment. So the emphasis is on workplace learners using RPL to access destination awards in the Institute of Technology. So we're funded by the Higher Education Authority, and it's a 2-year project that started last year. So we have some participation rates, difficulties, and we need to up the numbers in order to look better for comparison purposes, but also because it's the right thing to do. So we have 6 objectives in the project. The first is to identify the destination awards that are relevant to industry and workplace learners. In other words, what are the awards that adults want to come into and need? The second is to identify relevant formal, non-formal and informal learning that is supported or provided by workplaces. The third part of that is to match the workplace learning to the destination awards. Then we develop an online RPL portal to facilitate applications for those awards. At the moment, adults have to undergo a paper-based system, even if they file it electronically. And we have something like 8 different forms that could be used. Then we test the online RPL portal with workplace learners. We evaluate the user experience, we refine and we disseminate, and we're using existing industry networks and the Southeast Regional Skills Forum. So the first group of stakeholders comes from the industry sectors in the southeast of Ireland: agri-food, tourism, global business and finance, construction and manufacturing, biopharma and medical technology, and information technology. And then the second group of stakeholders are the relevant teams in W.I.T, and we're starting with 3. First is a pharmaceutical manufacturing undergraduate award. The next is a Lean Fundamentals in Business undergraduate award, and then a conversion course in computer science. So you can actually see the EQ levels are similar, and we're concentrating on those because it's far more straightforward for the postgraduate teams to use RPL than it is for the undergraduate teams. So we're guided by 4 questions given to us when Dr. Ernesto Villalba Garcia of CDFOP addressed the RPL Practitioner Network in Ireland, and he asked, how can we connect existing practices to RPL? Are learning outcomes understood and accepted? Can we adopt common templates? And are we using the full potential of new technology? So they were questions that were very timely for us. So what we've actually done, coming to the end of the first year of the project, we identified the first 3 destination awards. We did requirements gathering, and that informed the portal design and development. And that meant meeting the teams, finding out exactly how they wanted the portal used, what their concerns with. So the portal is now developed for non-standard entry first, and then we're going to use it for exemptions. We're meeting with industry representatives from this month on. It was scheduled for March, unfortunately, that had to be delayed. And the portal will be available from September this year. This is what it looks like. An applicant will be directed to this landing page. It will describe the portal and how to use it. It will also show them the awards that they're interested in. They click into that, and then they can actually proceed to enter their data. There can be feedback and communication, but the whole idea is that they will know when they've actually matched whatever the requirements are and shown that they have the equivalent. They should get recognition of prior learning. So our next steps are to make the portal available to all of the 6 schools in Waterford Institute of Technology, and that'll be in the next academic year, and to actually map the workplace learning to the destination awards so that mentors, HR people in industry, in communities of practice will actually be able to help workplace learners say, you've done such and such a program, that's going to be relevant to get in a particular module, for example. So they're the different destination awards that are actually visible at the moment, and we'll be able to add to those over time. And this is the kind of information that the applicant will be asked. Their personal information on one page, their work experience, education and training, exemptions, if they're interested in exemptions. The program teams will be able to put in prompts, particular information, if they want to do learning outcomes as competencies. In other words, the program teams will actually put the requirements into language that is understood by the workplace learner. So what are we learning? Okay, program teams need reassurance in relation to compliance assurance. They also need reassurance that their RPL practice will comply with policy. So they need the conversations about how RPL supports program teams and their students. And they also need control of the functions of the RPL portal for their destination award. And they need to know that the RPL portals fits into their existing work allocation. It'll save them time. It won't create more work. So those 4 questions then, what we're finding is it is faster to connect existing practices to RPL than develop new ones. Because if somebody's already using the old paper-based system, they understand it and they can actually give you the requirements. Whereas starting to develop a practice takes much longer. We find that learning is well understood and accepted, fortunately. We are adopting a common template, and new technology seems to be an enabler of RPL. So what we're going to do next is extend the portal right throughout the Institute, map workplace learning to the destination awards, identify automatic exemptions, and this is where workplace learning, non-certified learning, can be used to get an exemption from a module. Automatically, just furnish evidence, a transcript or a certificate. We will be proposing professional development opportunities for staff engaging with RPL within the Institute, and we'll be establishing what the professional development needs for workplace mentors are, because there'll be people in industry who wish to support RPL applicants.
Thank you. Clapping your hands. I hope you can hear it, Maeve. It was a big applause. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we have time for some questions, actually. And the first one, I will ask for myself, as we are here in the moderator's role, then we have a chance to ask directly. But if someone of you really feels that you want to ask something, please write it down to the chat. We can come to your questions as well. But when you talked about developing this portal, I think that the most challenging is not developing a portal, but the work that is behind that. So what do you feel is really the most challenging, or what have you learned the most out of this process?
one of the surprises was that I am familiar with the RPL policy in our own institute, and I made the assumption that that familiarity was common. It isn't, because policy changes over time, and we have so many regulations and so many people involved in updating them, that a change that may relate to RPL doesn't get communicated. So it's been a marvelous opportunity to bring people's understanding up to date. Another surprise was that lecturers may not have understood that they can recognize experiential learning. And this is where the CDFOP guidelines have made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So when you should do that kind of project for the second time, what would you do differently, or what are your suggestions to those who are planning to do the same kind of things? What would you suggest definitely to put in the focus of this process?
Have conversation with staff as soon as possible, because that's what's making all the difference. It's fundamental. Having those talks, those discussions. It's the common understanding bit in the word cloud.
So for me, it was really interesting to hear that you somehow got a restart actually in your organization with RPL. So even you have done it for a long time already, then still it's like, yeah, a restart. But I have also one question. It's maybe a bit to see the bigger picture. That Maeve, what do you think? What would we miss in the education system if we wouldn't have RPL?
I think a lot of adult learners or potential students would feel disrespected. I think it's very respectful to bring students into higher education, saying that we recognize you have very, very valuable experience and learning, some of which may be relevant to this particular program. But it's fundamental in adult pedagogy, in andragogy, that we get to know the learner, we get to know their familiarity with the area, and we work from where the learner is at. To miss that would be a terrible waste, in my opinion.
Thank you. And one more question from me. It goes even more further than Heleriin's question, actually. How do you imagine the RPL role in about 10 years? What do you think when you see the tendencies and how things are developing around us? How do you see the role changing or developing further on? What do you think?
I see it like other disruptive technologies, like technology enhanced learning, how fundamental that role, that role in higher education, that support service for an entire higher education institute has become absolutely fundamental and taken for granted. Where would we be at the moment without technology enhanced learning? I see RPL in the same way, but I also recognize how long it takes for something to come in as an innovation at the margins, as a disruptive technology, actually being embedded in the institution. So in my case, it's taken me 20 years to see this embedding actually happening. But it's great to see it. I'll take it whenever it comes. And in 10 years' time, all providers, further and higher education providers, will have it central to their practices.
So sorry, Maeve, we don't make it easy for you, but we have one comment question from Anuska Ferrari from European Commission, and she writes us that you mentioned that you used CEDEFOP guidelines. We are now updating the guidelines, so I would like to ask you what you think would be useful for you. So that's our last question, Maeve.
I think the guidelines are absolutely essential. I've used what's already there. I think new fields of practice are emerging. The issue of the limitations in relation to regulatory bodies, I suppose I would actually have to go back to the guidelines to see what they have to say around that. But that is a challenge we actually have, where we're developing qualifications with a regulatory body, but we don't seem to be able to influence the regulatory body and their policy.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you, Anushka, for your question as well. So I think we are now quite in the end of the first webinar. We have sent you already the information about the next webinars that will take place in 3rd of June and 11th of June. So you are very kindly welcome to join us in those webinars as well.